Mr. Aliriza, now ISIL has claimed the responsibility. Are you surprised, briefly?
Not at all. What a horrible way to start the year. Turkish forces and Turkish-backed Syrian opposition forces are actually fighting ISIS in northern Syria. ISIS has been threatening Turkey with retaliation. The method of operation used by the gunman is very reminiscent of similar attacks by ISIS. Clearly, Turkey was a target of opportunity right across the border from Syria. And the answer to your question is I was not surprised at all.
I see. Mr. Aliriza, you know this better than anyone else. 2016, the year that just passed, was a terrible and tough year for Turkey. Terror happens nearly every month in the country. Here we have listed some of the deadliest attacks last year. Most attacks targeting civilians were carried out by ISIL, and many targeting military posts were conducted by the Kurdish militants. But the question is, Mr. Aliriza, before we go to the Russian guest, let me ask you once again. Is a ceasefire in Syria, as we have seen over the past few days, likely to solve part of the problem, Mr. Aliriza?
I don't think so. Clearly there's been a switch in Turkey's policy towards Syria. For 5 years, it backed the opposition, which was trying to overthrow the Assad regime, which was backed by Russia. After the July 15th coup, the rapprochement between Russia and Turkey has seen Turkey move closer to the Russian position. The ceasefire arrangement obviously benefits Assad. It is one that the opposition, not just the opposition which was forced to evacuate Aleppo, but which is now trying to hold on in Idlib province, but also ISIL does not like. We'll see how far the ceasefire holds. Already there's evidence that it's been breached. Ultimately, the ability of Russia and Turkey to impose a ceasefire is questionable.
Mr. Matuzov, you heard your counterpart's comments. The question really is whether the cooperation between Russia and Turkey this time on the ceasefire plan likely to solve the problem. You have promised both sides to reduce the presence in Syria. How serious is that?
I see that Russian-Turkish cooperation in fighting terrorism gave real results, while our cooperation with the United States and prolonged discussions, different document with Lavrov Kerry, 6 months gave a result, a condition that cannot be implemented because of differences in American administration. John Kerry says something, Ashton Carter says something else, opposite position. That's why now when we agreed with Turkey to put an end on violence, on fire in Syria, and it stopped, this decision stopped activity of Daesh and Nusra fronts that are representing extremistic groups registered in this in Security Council decision. And that's why the United States and Western powers became just a little bit aside of the peaceful process.
Well,
because the results were reached in cooperation with Russian, Iranian, and Turkish Minister of Foreign Affairs and Ministers of Defense.
We know that fact, but the question, as I asked earlier, is whether things are going to get better, whether ceasefire is really likely to be conducted. We have heard ceasefire, the words, many, many times. We've heard documents also many times, but only take a few days, sometimes even a few hours before it came to a collapse. Therefore, I want to go to you, Dr. Aliriza. Russia and Turkey never before saw eye to eye in terms of their stance, who is to supporting the rebels and the other is supporting Assad, but now eventually did with the ceasefire plan. How earlier I was asking Mr. Matuzov, serious are the two sides, but now I want to ask you, How sincere do you think the two sides could be, and how long will that sincerity last?
Well, sincerity is
I think that
is not the word I would use in.
Mr. Aliriza.
The sincerity is not a word I would use when it comes to diplomatic contacts and international relations. Clearly, both sides see advantages in pursuing this rapprochement. Russia is giving support to the Turkish incursion in northern Syria. There are reports that Russian aircraft have bombed ISIL targets in northern Syria to support the Turkish forces there. Obviously, there's tactical cooperation. But the question that we have to ask, and you're asking rightly, is, can the two sides continue their cooperation, which will ultimately lead, if the agreement holds, to the defeat of the opposition forces in Syria, which were previously backed by Turkey. It's Turkey that's made the concession, and as we've seen with the attack in Istanbul that you began the program with, there is a reaction from ISIL, and previously there was an assassination, let us not forget, of the Russian ambassador in Ankara. We do not yet know exactly what motivated the gunman, but frankly, both Russia and Turkey could be vulnerable for different reasons from the opposition.
And it is not just these factors we need to take into account, but also the changing factors. We have seen the U.S. presidential election. President-elect Mr. Trump seemed to have a imagination of having warmer relationship with Russia. Mr. Matuzov, will that be able to a certain extent, change the overall situation? Will that be able to make this ceasefire plan, the current one, by the way, a little bit long-lasting?
Well, I think that Turkey and Russia had a strategic alliance. We cannot await that Turkey will change its attitude, that Turkey will be on the side of oppositional forces, because all oppositional forces, military forces, that were connected with this way or that way with Turkey, agreed to ceasefire, refused to agree with ceasefire only those who considered a terroristic group, Nusra, Daesh, Ahrar al-Sham, and other militarized groups that were out of control, Turkish control. But during 5 years, all these groups were receiving military, financial, and political support through Turkish territory. Today, Turkey changed its attitude, changed its position towards situation in Syria, and agreed to put a Syrian choice for president for Syrian people, not to impose its will, its desire to see any other person except Bashar Assad. Now,
Mr. Matuzov, we all know these facts.
Dramatically.
We all know these facts, but I want to really ask you for your comments about what is next, really. I mean, how long will this ceasefire last? As we have to throw in earlier the question about the United States, you seem to skip it away, but I have to drag you back to that as well, sir, because U.S. does want to play a role. What role, we don't know, but certainly it's a big player in the region, has a lot to do with the fate of Assad. Russia seems to have a warmer relationship now with the United States. If the new president comes in, how much strategically it's going to change the relationship? And also on the situation in Syria, you have to go to the answers directly, sir. Mr. Matuzov.
Well, I think that three sides gathering in Moscow put a pragmatical view on the situation. They worked out a geographical plan of this, where is different terroristic groups located, where is merited groups allocated, how much they are. And when we read it in the report of our Minister of Defense, found out that main territories controlled by Nusra are belonging to political Syrian opposition. And there is the agreement to continue war against terroristic groups, and Nusra between them. Now there are a case in Zabadani. Zabadani is location to the west of Damascus, where under control of Nusra. Now they are asking to stop fighting.
I saw Dr. Aliriza keep on waving his head. Obviously, Dr. Aliriza, you don't agree with your Russian counterpart.
No, he's focusing on the details of the ongoing civil war in Syria, whereas your question was about what's likely to happen in 20 days when Trump takes over. I mean, this is the wild card. Clearly, both Moscow and Ankara were unhappy with the Obama policies. Different reasons, actually. Turkey was initially became unhappy with Obama because Obama was not backing Turkey as it backed the opposition in Syria to overthrow Assad. Now we are in a situation in which there's no strategic alliance between Moscow and Ankara. There is a tactical agreement on Syria. Turkey still remains a strategic partner of the United States. It's a member of NATO. It has a long-standing military relationship, and clearly that will continue through these days and when Trump takes over. Now, there's a question mark. Sorry, go ahead.
Dr. Aliriza, there is a real question. We talk about Turkey's change, but there are things inside Turkey that is so uncertain at this moment. After the coup, President Erdogan took hold of the whole country and also punished those who were he considered as active. Therefore, police forces, military, a lot of them were being quote-unquote punished or put aside. Secondly, the PKK has also been a big problem inside Turkey. Whether it's terrorists or not, there are different governments around the world that have different opinions. Therefore, Turkey has to come to issues with these countries about that. So many uncertain issues. How much can Turkey really commit to this? Plus, many of the migrants coming through Turkey, you do not know necessarily the identity. So, Dr. Aliriza, really, what are we talking about here?
What we're talking about is a country that's facing massive domestic problems, exacerbated by external issues. You're absolutely right. There are 3 million Syrian refugees in Turkey. We don't know how many of them are likely to be jihadist volunteers today, tomorrow, and 10, 15 years down the road. Secondly, you're again correct as always. Turkey is facing the twin threats of terrorism from the jihadists of different varieties, particularly ISIL, but also from the PKK, which goes back many decades. Third, since July 15th, Turkey has been very much focused on dealing with the threat posed by the followers of Fethullah Gülen, because Turkey has blamed them for that for the coup attempt which failed. And he happens to live in the United States, which raises complications for its relationship with the US. Clearly, Turkey has decided that to continue to cooperate with Russia, to try and reduce the Syrian risk, if I can call it that, to its domestic stability. Whether it continues down this road and whether it's successful as it continues down this road, we don't know. It will depend on a number of factors. And again, to go back to President-elect Trump, I'm talking to you from Washington, and nobody really knows here in Washington or anywhere else exactly what Trump is going to do with respect to Syria.